Casefile-Dogman, civilian, number 0819. Initial victim is an autistic male of 9 years old. Severe anxiety around strangers. Communicative abilities restricted to barely legible writing in a large diary. Secondary victim is the child's mother. Father's whereabouts are unknown, not important in this case. 3 weeks prior to the incident, she purchased an emotional support animal to see if it would alleviate her child's anxiety issues. Location is a lifestyle block in the state of Montana. The land is family-owned and was seldom in use. Financial information was further obtained in the process of our investigations into the event, and deemed inconsequential, but recorded for the sake of necessity. The initial victim was content to be left alone, but according to the counseling adhered to by the mother, she felt this would hamper the social development of the child. Records from these counseling sessions indicated that the counselor would explain that due to the levels of anxiety the child exhibits in social situations, there would be little chance of future development. The counselor did gently coax the mother into acquiring an emotional support animal that the child might feel bonded to. Given the location where they lived, a dog was suggested. According to the audio from the nanny cam footage, the bonding process was a success, with the initial victim showing some self-confidence, even looking his mother directly in her eyes. The dog was well-trained and didn't react to the extreme emotions exhibited in the lounge area. 3 weeks later, the mother could be seen running into the lounge. The time was quite late, judging by the lack of light outside the windows. Blood could be seen on her clothing. Judging by her wails and screams, the child was dead, mauled by some animal. Clutched tightly in her hand is the cordless phone for the house. While the phone line was disconnected, the microphone still worked, and the hard drive in the base was still recording. The mother was aware that the phone lines weren't working, and she could hear scraping movement upstairs. This was confirmed via the recordings acquired. She was then seen rushing to a window, and she looked out in shock. After significant alterations of the video recording, a lupine humanoid cryptid, known commonly as a dogman, was seen skulking at the edge of the camera range. Presumably seeing this, the mother backed away and turned as a canine head peered around the corner, nearly hitting its head on the doorframe, indicating that it was not of a standard height of any known dog breeds. It stalked into the room on its hind legs. The coloration looks like the emotional support animal previously mentioned. Parts of the fur seemed matted down, likely with blood. A third dogman also entered, but was on all fours. Judging by the gait, it seemed unsure of its pace. This could be attributed to the polished wooden floor. The secondary victim was frozen in fear when she saw the two cryptids. The attack was swift and coordinated. The one on all fours went low, while the standing one went high. Her death was quick. The third one joined the other two for the meal, after the standing one unlocked the door. They then walked to the door, opened it, then bounded off into the night. Police investigation came as part of an initial missing persons report after the mother hadn't called her family. Police found the bodies, and they opened a homicide investigation. The case remains open. The bodies were diverted from the regular coroners to ones affiliated with this forum. Autopsy. Initial victim. Multiple bite marks to the arm and stomach area. Scratch marks from a large paw evidenced on the limbs. Microtumors located within the brain which could indicate the autism and social anxiety problems. Secondary victim. Bite wound on the ankle, severing an Achilles tendon. Single bite mark to throat. Evidence that the stomach area was gorged. Missing organs include ovaries, kidneys, uterus, stomach, pancreas, liver, 95% of the intestines. Secondary investigation. Our primary one. Scouring the nanny cam footage shows the weeks leading up to the attack. Movement could be seen during the day of the emotional support animal. No anomalous movements detected. 5 days after the bonding, a Dogman cryptid could be seen creeping up to the house. The emotional support animal stood up and walked over to the wall, opposite of where the Dogman crawled to. The ESA stood there for several minutes until the Dogman cryptid crept away. The initial victim just watched his ESA stand at the wall, while the initial victim is normally next to the ESA at all times, even during sleep. The movement at the edge of the nannycam view resumed until the night of the attack. Movement in the peripheral showed 2 Dogmen approach the house. One skulked at the edge of the light on all fours, while the other ran to the side. Screams could be heard from a location suspected to be the child's bedroom. Soon, the mother could be seen entering the lounge in the state previously described. Several journals were taken as evidence in the initial investigation. Upon discovery of the contents within, they were switched with duplicates, with explicit mentions of dogs being removed. The mother made note of several minor incidents when her child would stand at the window and look into the forest. When she asked if he would like to go for a walk in there, he refused violently. As soon as she mentioned that they wouldn't walk there, the child immediately stopped and hugged his mother. Judging by the description in the following incidents, it appears to the same location the ESA would stand when the Dogman approached. The mother advised, while she did some basic yard work, that she always felt trepidation when she looked to the forest area, like there was something watching her. She tried to muster the courage to go look for herself, but didn't want to risk leaving her child alone. The journals of the boys seemed nonsensical, but after multiple encounters with children on the spectrum, certain clues were common amongst all of them. These journals were able to get upgraded in their standards of language. The initial victim was aware of the cryptid presence. When he would see the Dogman standing outside his window, he would scream for his mother, causing the cryptid to flee. This happened for about 2 years. One day, while he was walking around the backyard, within view of his mother, he felt the Dogman approach. Its claw snagged his shorts and started to drag him away, but his mother, fortunately, spotted her child disappear from view. When she approached, the Dogman ran, leaving the child behind. What people would find most chilling is that the day the ESA stood near the cryptid was referenced in the book of the initial victim. Doggy was wrong, looked like doggy, but not doggy. Ma not know doggy wrong. Doggy looks at me like the bad thing at times. It is surmised that the ESA was turned into a Dogman through unknown means, as 3 Dogmen were seen running from the house. The ESA Dogman was able to use his paw to turn the lock by hooking the key in between his toes. The handle was easier to manage. Details on the cryptid. Dogman. Dogman is of a common cryptid type, the anthropomorphic animal. While it doesn't have full human features, it is able to walk on hind legs for extended periods of time and display near-human intelligence. Significantly weaker than the more supernatural Wendigo or Skinwalker, regularly available firearms are enough to kill a Dogman. Reports indicate that upon death, Dogmen revert to their more base canine form. If there are any more cryptids you would like to know about, feel free to let me know in the comments below. As previously mentioned, there have been requests for a case including the cryptid known colloquially as Bigfoot. This is an unusual cryptid, in which the incidents involving are often just sightings of something big in the woods, but there have been journals from long-term hikers and campers who have had prolonged encounters with these cryptids. There's also one autopsy for a Bigfoot. The mortician who conducted the autopsy was inconsolable for months afterwards. He has recently returned to work. He has also requested counseling until further notice. Case file. Bigfoot, civilian. Number 011. A weathered-looking journal was found on a picnic table in a large national park. For obvious reasons, the exact location will not be included. Park ranger retrieved the journal, and after trying to find out the identity of the owner, the subsequent report made it to us. where we retrieved the journal and spoke with the park ranger. The park ranger agreed to not mention anything about this journal. The camper who wrote this journal had gone on a rediscovery adventure. They show how they hadn't been connected to the outdoors for a period of 8 years and greatly missed the tranquility. Having gone on a sabbatical, they did the appropriate level of research for the area they were going to, and had gotten equipment to replace old gear. They did some training to keep fit for the long hikes, spoke with the park rangers, and left. The details were removed from the relevant database. The beginning of the journal is a descriptive journey, making mapping the beginning quite easy. 2 weeks in is the first indication that there was something preternatural afoot. The sense of being watched, and the occasional muffled snap of a branch being broken. This went on for around 6 days. The person did not indicate any trepidation regarding these events. A couple of days after the sense of being watched stopped, the camper detailed an encounter with 2 very gruff-looking men. They had an almost feral look in their eyes, and their presence was intensely unsettling. Their communication was rough, almost punctuated with growls. Their leering gaze made the camper very uncomfortable. As they took 1 step closer, they both stopped simultaneously. They looked around, like kids caught with their hand in the cookie jar. A gasp escaped their lips, and they bolted away. It wouldn't be until later that the camper would recognize the look and behavior. It was that of the startled prey. The writing is in cursive, and has been fluent throughout the journal so far. The night after that encounter, the camper noted that instead of feeling refreshed like they normally had since their excursion, they felt mentally exhausted. Careful examination noted that the cursive was not as flowing. For the next week, the fluency of the cursive writing was deteriorating, and block lettering was being used in place of it. Repeating mention of a reoccurring dream, the camper describes the ineffable urge to stand in the middle of a clearing next to a large silhouette of a humanoid. The dream would consist of the 2 of them standing there for hours on end. After the aforementioned week, the camper detailed the first popular encounter with a Bigfoot, or, to be more precise, the Bigfoot from the dream. Exiting their tents to cook an evening meal, the camper noticed the presence immediately. A large humanoid, approximately 9 feet tall, stood half-hidden behind a tree at the edge of the small clearing. The camper was camping in. Instead of fear, the camper felt a sense of serenity. The camper nodded to the Bigfoot, then cooked their meal. The camper had trouble putting into words what happens next, because while he did engage in a form of communication, due to the nature of how the conversation took place, putting it into words seemed difficult, as 5 pages were filled with writing which was crossed out on multiple occasions. From what could be ascertained, the Bigfoot would telepathically impart the concept of something into the camper's mind. For this instance, it was the concept of cooking food. Not the description of it, but the concept. It seemed a little hazy, as if unsure. The camper tried to explain vocally about the process of cooking one's food, but the Bigfoot reinforced the idea, and instead of cooking, the focus was on the process of cooking. It took a while, but it seemed that the Bigfoot was looking for an invitation to join the camper for the evening meal. The camper tried to form the image of the 2 of them sitting together to eat, which the Bigfoot took as the invitation it was meant to be. For around 10 days, this guest would be invited to join for the evening meal, and they would sit and eat. The meal would have to be cooler for the Bigfoot to enjoy properly. The writing was getting thicker, as if the hand writing the information down was heavier than normal. Since the likelihood of the camper gaining such a significant amount of mass to allow this event to occur, the mystery would remain unsolved until the end of the journal. After the 10 days, the Bigfoot put forth the concept of community. The camper put forth the sense of city life, while shaking his head. The Bigfoot frowned, then sent the concept again, but this time the focus was on community in the forest, with other Bigfoot. After a while, the camper agreed. The belongings were packed, and the pair walked off into the woods. It wouldn't be until they got to the location the Bigfoot was leading him to that the camper noticed that he was finally able to stand eye to eye with his large, quiet friend. 3 more journal entries followed, but the language was very broken English, like trying to describe thorough concepts in as few words as possible. The entry that the morticians found interesting was no the communal aspect of Bigfoot culture, but when the two saw those men, the concept of wrongness, imagined as a black fog with a large red cross in it surrounding those two, and then an image of an endless corridor of trees like a hellish maze. Small food items like berries were used as the concept for small amounts of food near the bald man's feet with an early sunrise. It was agreed that the Bigfoot, due to their telepathic nature, could cause people to become lost in their forest through telepathic manipulation, and while not violent, did leave enough food for the 2 bad men so they would not die due to starvation. Case file. Bigfoot autopsy number 01. The Bigfoot in question was found dead in a national park somewhere within the U.S. Since the park ranger wanted to be vocal about this discovery, he was gaslit into alcoholism, which, given his family background, took little effort. The Bigfoot was 9.5 feet tall, his mass weighing in at around 380 pounds. There was very little fat. The mortician who conducted the autopsy noted that their hair was soft to the touch, and the skin was tough to cut through. Preliminary examination showed significant injuries to the torso and the arms. Scratch marks indicated a skinwalker, due to the variety of necrotizing fasciitis in the wounds. What was startling was that there were antibodies for the infection, preventing any decomposition. The musculature was incredibly dense, as was the bone structure. The killing blow seemed to be when the claws of the skinwalker penetrated the heart. There were no adrenal glands within the Bigfoot, nor were there any reproductive organs. But judging by the above-mentioned journal, it seemed that these cryptids can infect others, but only the ones they choose. I would state that Bigfoots are a higher form of cryptid. While their communicative abilities are unique, they have shown to be capable of communicating with others, and their ability to show mercy, while they could have easily killed those men, indicates a higher level of communicative awareness. Mothman. Research in popular culture indicates that the winged cryptid is an omen, mainly connected with ill fortune. Correlations between alleged Mothman sightings and diseases seems to indicate this. There are not many cases involving the Mothman in these archives, mainly due to the fact that this deals with the dead people directly, caused by cryptids or other unexplained events. Since the Mothman does not kill, this greatly reduces the amount of information that is able to be accrued. There are some journals of Mothman events scribed by those who have seen the cryptid. Case file. Mothman, civilian, number 004. Journal of a 15-year-old girl. Most of the contents are that you would normally find inside a journal of a teenage girl who still kept up with this tradition. The entries of interest in regards to the Mothman are very few. The first entry describes a walk the girl took through a wooded area near her school. She notes how she is confident walking through the woods by herself, due to her athleticism. She also had several years of wilderness experience. The walk was supposed to be about 3 hours. Approximately 40 minutes into this walk, the girl spotted a dead deer with circular holes in the chest area. She looked around for any sign of a hunter, but this trail was a known walking area, so the chance of a hunter risking the death of an innocent person would be extremely unlikely in her purview. She stood up and continued on her way, and she was bothered by a feeling she could not describe, like a light buzzing in her mind that kept her very vigilant. After 10 minutes, the girl was brought to a halt, when she saw a tall humanoid with wings, glaring at her with red eyes. The sight of this monster caused the girl to bolt. The girl would make notes, indicating she was paranoid about this creature. 2 months later, she would detail her second encounter. This one was the most terrifying, as her paranoia had dwindled down significantly, until it landed by her bedroom window. Its glowing red eyes would peer into her room, and seeing this tall monster gaze at her brought her paranoia back. She screamed at it to leave, and when her parents came to investigate, they could not see any signs of the monster she described. This is when things took an unusual turn. When the girl was able to control herself long enough to conduct her own investigation, she noticed some large gouges in the wall and on several trees. She took photos with her cell phone, and her writing became significantly more manic. She would claim to see it more and more. It began to have a deteriorating effect on her sanity. Her parents pulled her from school due to the repeated screams she would exhibit. Eventually, the girl would be placed in a mental institution. Her suicide occurred 5 years later. Secondary investigation. While some hallmarks of the encounter were similar to other encounters, the secondary investigation brought to light some intriguing details. First of all, there were no records of a deer carcass found with holes in it along any walking trail. The closest thing was a dead squirrel, which had a singular circular hole in its neck. This was quite decomposed when found, but nothing else found matched the injuries as described. Obviously, the false sightings while she was in public were noted down, but the photos were what drew the attention of the investigators. Out of the 5 working the case, only one of them could see the apparent damage. But going by what the investigator described and what was noted in the journal were almost as conflicting as they were corroborating. This investigator was known as a conspiracy theorist who was very fastidious in his investigations, while almost none of them bore fruit. The one leading to his current employment certainly did. This had led to speculation that the apparent correlation leading to the popular belief that Mothman is a harbinger of tragedy could be its ability to cause people to become obsessively paranoid and allow people to look for links that aren't actually there. The parallel theory, it is called. 2 lines, one denoting tragedies and the other for Mothman sightings. Some dates would mix, but given the population density, the fact that technology is not infallible and human error is also a leading factor, it could be explained that it is 2 lines of events not overlaid, but happening to share the same details some of the time. I am unsure of what to make of this myself. While this sounds like it sort of debunks the Mothman, I think there is a little more to it than that. Imagine being able to turn some of the more observant enemies into a paranoid fool that wouldn't be believed because the paranoid person no longer fully functions on the same societal norm. Their actions would discredit them, and they would be the boy you called wolf. While they do actually see the wolf, no one else can. It makes no sense to me. I am not sure if it makes sense to you all, but this is one possible interpretation. The Mothman is an aerial scout unit, who is able to disguise itself in paranoid delusions. A scout for who or what is yet to be determined. The second interpretation is that it could be weeding out those vulnerable to the rake. As a cryptid, the rake is able to have a more psychologically draining effect on those who are unfortunate enough to encounter it, and the almost nihilistic viewpoints those people suffer could easily have been paranoid delusions instead. But this is just my interpretation of the cases I have seen and transcribed. Not everyone will agree with me, and that is perfectly fine. But I think there is a lot more to these cryptid entities and the unusual deaths that are not related to any logical chain of events. I'm just not sure what that is yet.